everyone, and welcome to Fandom Vintage. My name is Lily, and I make things inspired by some of my favorite fandoms, but with a vintage twist. Now, as much as I love a vintage outfit, there's something that I will always have a soft spot for, and that's accessories. So today I am making an Animal Crossing inspired Fascinator hat, and this one is based off of the item leaf in the game. And now I can wear it on my head. So this is a really simple project that you could actually apply to any shape or fabric that you like. But for this one, I am using a forest green moleskin fabric that matches the Isabelle skirt that I made. So without further ado, let's get started. So first, just to go over the materials that we'll be using today. First, we have the paper cutouts of the Animal Crossing leaf. I have the patterns of these in the description box below for you. Some craft felt, I use black, but you can use any color. And a fabric of your choice. I do recommend something a little bit thinner and a little bit stretchy. It'll be a bit easier to work with. Then we also have some glue, scissors, a bowl for water, and also something that you would like to shape your hat around. So I have a bowl that has about the right curvature that I like, and to line it with a bit of cling film. We'll also be using a spray adhesive and a bit of hot glue. So the first thing we're going to do is to cut out the leaf that doesn't have any allowance to it. Out of our felt, we'll be cutting out 2 of these eventually, so make sure you do have enough felt for 2 of these leaves. And I find that tracing it with chalk is the easiest way to see it on a black felt. And we cut it out. And then we do the same thing with our other fabric and the other leaf shape. Now this one I am marking it on the wrong side of the fabric just to avoid any chalk markings on the front. So if you do that, make sure you do flip your pattern to the other side. And then we cut everything out of our fabric. Now we're going back in to trace these other cut lines on the pattern, and this is just to help be able to fold the fabric down over the felt later on when we finish our hat. So this part doesn't have to be too perfect, but just try to get it close if you can. Now we line our bowl with cling film. Make sure that it goes down all the way to the sides, that way you get the true shape of the curve of whatever it is you're molding your hat into. And we have a bowl of water that we will be adding glue to. I add enough to roughly have about a 1-to-1 ratio of glue to water. And then mix it all together. Make sure that the glue is fully dissolved in all of the water and everything is pretty even. And then we're going to saturate the felt to make sure everything is completely covered, because we want our felt to become pretty stiff. And then lay it into your bowl or whatever you're using to shape your hat. Make sure you smooth out any wrinkles and any kind of folds, because it will dry this way. And a little extra glue for good measure. And now we leave it out to dry, and this usually takes about a day or so. And while that's drying, we're going to work on the embellishment of our hat. And so this is like a little leaf vein, and so I'm going to be cutting this shape out with scissors. You can always use something like an X-Acto knife, or if you're extra fancy, use something like a Cricut maker to cut this out for you. And now that it's all cut out, we just place it back onto the front side of our fabric this time. And I trace it with a little bit of chalk just to be able to see where the design is on the front of our fabric. So I don't have an embroidery machine, but I figured out how to do this with just a piece of paper underneath my fabric here. You can use a stabilizer if you have it, but I didn't, and paper worked just fine that I found. Now I used a zigzag stitch with a stitch length of 1 and a stitch width of 3. So what I do now is just carefully trace that chalk line that we drew earlier with our sewing machine, and we just sew it all the way down, and it makes it look really nice and pretty close to other machine embroidery. Ta-da! And then we just remove the paper off the back of our fabric. And there we go. Now it's been about a day and our felt is fully dry. As you can see when we pick it up out of the bowl here, it is pretty rigid now and it has a nice curve, but it still has a little bit of a flex to it, which makes it a little bit easier to wear. And so at this point, we're ready to attach our main fabric onto the felt. Now this is where our spray adhesive comes into play. I have no idea why I decided to hold the can upside down to display it, but I used a 3M spray mount glue, and I like it because it is repositionable just in case I do need to reposition my fabric onto the felt. Now make sure you line your table with newspapers, or I have some tracing paper here underneath because this thing gets everywhere, and make sure you're in a well ventilated area as well because the fumes are pretty nasty. Now we do a light spray over the entire surface of the convex side of the hat, and so that is the one that curves upwards towards you. Next, we can go ahead and lay our fabric right side down, and we will be positioning and centering our felt onto our fabric here. Make sure that everything lines up before you press it down. Now once everything is lined up, I like to make sure that especially the corners are placed in the right position. That way they do get covered with the fabric in the end, and pressing starting in the middle and stretching outwards with the fabric underneath, we slowly press from the middle of the felt outwards to the edge, just to make sure everything is secure and adhered to the fabric, and while stretching it a little bit as you're pressing down just to make sure you don't have any wrinkles on the top side. I also like to periodically flip it over and just make sure everything is smooth on the top side, and to smooth it out with my thumbs and make sure we don't have any bubbles or any wrinkles going along the way. Once the front has been glued down, it is time to pull out our handy dandy hot glue gun, and this is where we're going to tack down the rest of that edge and fold it over and glue it down onto our felt. Now you can use fabric glue if you prefer, but I find that hot glue does work just as well, especially on something like felt. And since this isn't a piece that will be laundered anyway, and I don't have the patience to wait for fabric glue to dry, I just went ahead and used hot glue. Now as you go around, you may have to clip some of your fabric off just to get rid of any excess. This really does depend on the type of fabric that you're using and how thick it is, especially around the curves here. Fortunately, my fabric was thin enough that I didn't have to clip any of these curves, but you might have to clip just a few just to be able to get it to lie flat as you're gluing it down onto the felt. Now as you reach the tip of the leaf, make sure that one side is fully glued down before you fold down the other side. This will ensure that you have a nice pointy edge to your leaf. And for these little corners here by the circle, make sure you do the same, that way you get a nice pointy edge. And for the circle, we have these little triangles that we had cut out before, and the important thing with this little circular part is to, when you put down the glue on the felt, to really stretch the triangle before you tack it down. That way we can get a nice round edge around that circle. Alright, and we're almost done. Now this is where we cut out the second shape of the leaf out of our felt. And now we're going to use this felt to cover up those raw edges that we just glued down, just to make everything nice and tidy. See, no more exposed edges. Now we still need to be able to attach clips onto our hat, so I just cut out 2 rectangles out of felt that were of a similar size. And then we're going to glue these strips down onto the back of the hat. I like to glue one on one end and one on the other, just to give it a little bit of versatility where I can place my clips. And that is pretty much it. So the only thing we have to do now is decide what kind of clip you want to put onto the hat. You can use anything you like. That could be something like a regular bobby pin that you can just slide through the strap here and just go ahead and pin it onto your hair. Or you can use something like this alligator clip. This one is a little bit thick, but if you have a thinner one, you could slide it through both of the straps here and clip it onto your hair. My personal favorite are these little Tic Tac clips, just because they do hold on to my hair very well, since I have very fine hair and things like bobby pins usually don't stay in very well. And now we are completely done. The only thing you have left is to go out and rock your new hat. And there you have it. So if you would like to make one of these cute little hats for yourself, I do have a free printout of those leaf patterns, and I will link those in the description box below for you. If you haven't seen my other Animal Crossing accessory, the bell bag purse, I do recommend checking out that video as well. Now, if you enjoyed watching this video and watching how I made this hat, please like this video and subscribe to my channel for more vintage, geeky, crafty goodness. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.